We need to talk when you get home. Emma's text glowed on my phone screen at 11:47 p.m. After 6 years together, I knew that tone. It meant she'd made another unilateral decision about our life and was about to present it as a done deal. The engagement ring receipt sat on my desk like evidence of my own stupidity. $47,000 for 2 carats of compressed carbon that would probably end up pawned within the month. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent more on that ring than most people made in a year, and I was about to lose the woman it was meant to impress. My fingers moved across the keyboard with mechanical precision, finishing the security patch that had kept me at the office until midnight. Clean code, no bugs, perfect execution. If only relationships came with version control and rollback options. The engagement had been her idea, of course. Emma Blake didn't leave anything to chance when it came to her career trajectory, and marrying a senior software architect at one of Silicon Valley's hottest startups was just another strategic move. I'd been too blinded by her ambition to recognize it as calculation. My Porsche purred through the empty streets of Palo Alto, past the glass towers where tomorrow's billionaires worked through the night, chasing the next disruption. The city felt different at midnight. Cleaner, more honest, stripped of the performance art that defined daylight hours in tech. Our apartment building rose 30 floors above the valley, each unit worth more than entire city blocks in normal places. Emma had insisted we needed to live somewhere that reflected our aspirations. Translation: somewhere Anthony Kellerman might notice us. I'd run the numbers on our relationship 6 months ago, treating it like any other system that needed optimization. Late nights working became later. Physical intimacy decreased by 40%. Her phone usage increased exponentially, especially encrypted messaging apps. Browser history cleaned obsessively. Credit card statements showed purchases at stores I'd never heard of. Expensive lingerie, designer perfume, clothing that never appeared in our shared closet. The data pointed to one conclusion, but I'd chosen to debug the wrong variables. I found her in our living room, designer luggage positioned strategically by the door, like props in a stage production. She'd changed into her favorite dress, the black one that made her look like a Fortune 500 executive, about to deliver quarterly results to disappointed shareholders. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled like she was heading to a board meeting. Jake. She stood, smoothing her skirt with hands that trembled slightly. Good. At least she had the decency to be nervous about destroying 6 years of someone else's life. Let me guess, I said, dropping my laptop bag with deliberate casualness. You're leaving me for someone with better stock options. Her rehearsed composure cracked like faulty encryption. Those green eyes, the ones I'd once thought were beautiful, widened with something that might have been surprise if I didn't know her better. How did you... Emma, you've been emotionally checking out for months. Your phone's always face down now. You delete your browser history religiously. You bought new underwear, but I haven't seen any of it. I walked to the kitchen, opened a beer with mechanical precision. Also, your GPS shows repeated trips to Palo Alto, specifically to a building owned by Kellerman Ventures. She followed me, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a countdown timer marking the seconds until detonation. Each step was calculated, purposeful, like everything else about Emma Blake. I didn't want it to happen this way, she said, and I almost laughed at the sheer predictability of the line. Emma had probably rehearsed this conversation in the mirror, perfecting her expression of regretful necessity. But it did happen. So let's skip the part where you pretend this is hard for you and get to the part where you tell me who he is. Anthony Kellerman. The name dropped like a system crash, taking down everything else with it. We're in love, Jake. We're starting a family. I nearly choked on my beer. Anthony Kellerman, venture capitalist, old money, the kind of guy who wore $1,000 watches and treated waitstaff like NPCs in his personal video game. Emma had always been ambitious, but this was trading up with a vengeance. The pregnancy announcement was theater, of course. Emma Blake was many things, but maternal had never been one of them. She'd made me use condoms even after we were engaged, claiming she wanted to time everything perfectly for our future. Apparently, that future included someone else's genetic material. "Congrats," I said, my voice flatlining like a crashed server. "When's the baby due? Or is that still in the planning phase?" "Jake, She blinked, clearly expecting tears or rage or some kind of emotional malware that would corrupt my processing power. "That's it? That's all you have to say?" I walked to my laptop, fingers already flying across the keyboard with the muscle memory of 15 years in software development. "What else is there?" "You've made your choice. Now I'm making mine." "What are you doing?" "Evening the playing field." The first thing any good software architect learns is that information is power, and shared systems are vulnerable systems. Emma and I had been living like merged code bases for 6 years, our digital lives intertwined in ways that she'd never bothered to understand. Bank accounts, credit cards, streaming services, insurance policies, car loans, all managed by the partner with better technical skills and attention to detail. That would be me. The beautiful thing about modern relationships is how completely intertwined our digital lives become. Shared cloud storage, joint bank accounts, co-signed loans, streaming services, insurance policies, it's like two computer systems merging into one network. And when that network gets compromised, well, sometimes you have to perform emergency surgery to prevent total data loss. I started with the joint checking account, fingers dancing across the keyboard like a concert pianist playing a familiar piece. Online banking made it so convenient to transfer funds to accounts that Emma couldn't access. Every penny she'd contributed over 6 years, plus my own money, flowing into my personal checking account with a few clicks and properly authenticated security tokens. "Jake, what are you doing?" Emma's voice carried the first notes of panic, like an error message finally penetrating a user's awareness that something was fundamentally wrong with their system. System maintenance. I pulled up her credit card accounts, the ones I'd been foolish enough to add her as an authorized user when we'd gotten serious 3 years ago. One by one, I removed her access with the clinical precision of a surgeon excising diseased tissue. You know what I love about being a software architect? Attention to detail. Her phone started buzzing, bank notifications, credit card declined alerts, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Disney Plus, all the digital comforts of modern life terminated with efficient clicks. American Express. Authorized user Emma Blake has been removed from account ending in 4829. Chase. Account access has been revoked for secondary user. Bank of America. Joint account holder has initiated fund transfer. Current balance, $847.92. You can't do this. She lunged for my laptop, but I'd anticipated that move. The screen was already locked, protected by biometric authentication that only recognized my fingerprint. Actually, I can. Amazing what you learn when you read the fine print on things you pay for. I pulled up another screen, showing the loan documentation for her Audi A4. Like your car. Her face went white as the blood drained away, leaving her looking like a system administrator who'd just realized they'd accidentally deleted the production database. That's my car. Actually, it's my car. The loan's in my name, registered to my address, with me as the primary account holder. The insurance is in my name. You're just an authorized driver. I dialed the finance company's 24-hour customer service line, and authorized drivers can become unauthorized. The customer service representative was surprisingly helpful once I explained that my vehicle had been taken without permission by someone no longer welcome in my home. Grand theft auto was such an ugly phrase, but legally accurate when the unauthorized driver refused to return the vehicle to its rightful owner. Emma's phone exploded with automated messages while she frantically tried to call Anthony Kellerman. Each text notification was another system failure in the comfortable life she'd built on my credit rating and financial responsibility. "Anthony, pick up," she pleaded into her phone, pacing like a trapped animal. "Something's wrong with Jake. He's lost his mind, Voicemail. Of course. Rich guys like Anthony didn't answer calls from their side pieces after midnight. They had wives and reputations and board meetings to consider. Women like Emma were compartmentalized, filed away in secure folders that only opened during appropriate business hours. You know what the funny thing is? I continued typing, accessing our shared iCloud account and systematically removing her access to 6 years of digital memories. Photos, documents, music playlists, all reverting to my sole ownership with administrative privileges that she'd never bothered to understand. I've been documenting your behavior for months. Screenshots filled my second monitor like evidence in a federal investigation. Deleted text messages recovered from cloud backups. Location data showing repeated trips to Anthony's Palo Alto penthouse. Credit card statements revealing purchases at Victoria's Secret and Agent Provocateur. Lingerie that had never made it into our shared bedroom. Pattern recognition is literally my job, Emma. I analyze systems, identify inefficiencies, predict failure points. I turned the monitor toward her so she could see her own infidelity mapped out in GPS coordinates and metadata. You've been predictably unfaithful for 4 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. The real-time GPS on her Audi showed me exactly where she'd driven it, Anthony's Palo Alto penthouse, repeatedly, always during his wife's extended business trips. I'd known about the affair before Emma had probably admitted it to herself. My phone buzzed with a notification from the repo company. Vehicle recovery in progress. ETA, 45 minutes. They're taking my car. Emma's voice cracked like buggy code failing under load. They're recovering my car from someone who no longer has permission to use it. I closed the laptop and looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. Without the careful makeup and strategic lighting, she looked older, harder, like software that had been running too long without proper updates or maintenance. By 2 a.m., Emma Blake was effectively homeless, penniless, and carless. Her keycard to Anthony's building had been deactivated. Apparently, building security was managed by his wife Patricia's European investment firm, and she didn't appreciate unauthorized access to the penthouse while she was traveling for business. "This is insane," Emma said, finally putting down her useless phone after the 15th failed attempt to reach Anthony. "You're destroying my life over a relationship that wasn't working anyway." "I'm not destroying anything, Emma. I'm just pulling back the resources you've been exploiting." I stood, grabbed her designer bags with their original price tags still attached, probably charged to credit cards that would be declined by morning. "Your Uber should be here in 5 minutes. I ordered you a ride to your parents' house in Fremont. I can't go there. They think we're still engaged. They think you're perfect for me. Then you'll have some explaining to do." I held the door open. "Unless you'd prefer to call Anthony again. I'm sure he'll answer eventually." She gathered her bags with the dignity of a deposed CEO cleaning out her corner office. "You'll regret this, Jake. When you realize what you've lost, the only thing I've lost is dead weight." I checked my watch. "Your ride's here." My brother David arrived at my office the next morning with coffee and the knowing expression of someone who'd seen this particular disaster coming from miles away. Private investigation had given him a sixth sense for relationship failures, and he'd been waiting for Emma's inevitable betrayal like a system administrator monitoring a server that was obviously about to crash. "So she finally made her move," he said, settling into the leather chair across from my glass desk. "How do you feel?" "Efficient." I pulled up Anthony Kellerman's public profile on my second monitor, studying the carefully curated images of Silicon Valley success. "Tell me what you know about this guy." David leaned forward, his investigator's eye cataloging details that most people would miss. Old money, Stanford MBA. His family's been in venture capital since the 70s, back when Sand Hill Road was actual fruit orchards. He scrolled through the images with professional interest. Also married with 2 kids. His wife Patricia is European old money, makes his family look like they just discovered wealth last week. Emma doesn't know about the wife. Of course not. Guys like Anthony are experts at compartmentalization. They run their affairs like classified government programs, need-to-know basis only. David pulled out his phone, fingers dancing across the screen. Want me to dig deeper? I want you to dig until you hit bedrock. By noon, David had assembled a fascinating profile that read like a case study in predatory behavior. Anthony Kellerman wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a serial predator who specifically targeted women in tech, usually right before major life events. Engagements, promotions, job changes, IPO announcements. He had a type: ambitious, intelligent women who were emotionally vulnerable and financially dependent on their partners. Emma wasn't special. She was just the latest algorithm in his pattern-matching system. Look at this, David said, spreading surveillance photos across my desk like evidence in a criminal investigation. Rebecca Martinez, software engineer at Google. He started pursuing her 2 weeks before her wedding last year. She called off the engagement, moved in with him for 3 months, then he discarded her when his wife came back from her European art acquisition tour. The photos showed Rebecca's progression from confident tech executive to broken woman leaving Anthony's building with garbage bags full of her belongings. The transformation was documented in high-definition detail: the gradual loss of professional polish, the increasing desperation in her posture, the final defeat when she realized she'd been played. Where is she now? Waitressing in Portland. Her career in tech is basically over. Anthony made sure to poison her professional reputation before dumping her. Sent emails to her former colleagues suggesting she was unstable, unreliable, prone to making poor decisions under pressure. I studied another set of photos. And this one? Jennifer Walsh, data scientist at Facebook. Same pattern exactly. He love-bombed her right after she got a promotion to senior director, convinced her to leave her long-term boyfriend, then discarded her when Patricia returned from her charity work in Africa. David tapped the images. She lasted 4 months. Now she's working at a startup in Austin, making about 60% of her former salary. The pattern was sickeningly consistent. Anthony Kellerman collected successful women like rare cars, used them while his wife traveled for business, then systematically destroyed their lives to ensure their silence and prevent future complications. How does he get away with it? Money and lawyers. Plus, he's careful to choose women who have something to lose professionally. Who's going to believe them over a billionaire venture capitalist with connections throughout Silicon Valley? David pulled out a tablet, showing me financial records. He also provides severance packages, 6-figure settlements with ironclad NDAs. Most of his victims take the money and disappear. My phone buzzed. Emma, calling for the 20th time since last night. I declined the call and turned back to David. I need you to follow him, document everything. Every meeting, every phone call, every woman he approaches. Jake, this isn't just about revenge anymore. This guy is genuinely dangerous. He's not just breaking up relationships, he's destroying lives systematically. I know. I opened a new file on my computer, labeled it Project Kellerman. That's why we're going to stop him. The rest of the day passed in productive fury. While David coordinated surveillance equipment and background checks, I dove into Anthony's digital footprint, like a hacker probing for vulnerabilities. Social media accounts, business registrations, property records, litigation history, building a comprehensive profile of a man who thought his wealth made him untouchable. By 6 p.m., we had enough information to start Phase 2 of what I was beginning to think of as the most important debugging project of my career. Patricia Kellerman returned from London 3 days early, and she was not happy. David's surveillance had revealed the travel schedule that Anthony clearly hadn't shared with Emma. While my ex-fiancé was probably redecorating his penthouse and planning their fictional future, his wife was cutting short her art acquisition trip and flying home to handle what she called irregularities in the household management. She lands at SFO in 2 hours, David texted from his position across from Anthony's building. Emma's still at the penthouse. Hasn't left since yesterday. Perfect timing. I was in a client meeting when my phone started buzzing with notifications from David's surveillance system. He'd positioned high-definition cameras across from Anthony's building, capturing everything with the kind of detail that would make NSA operatives jealous. "Excuse me," I told the potential investors, men in $1,000 suits who spoke in ROI and market penetration. "I need to take this." The live feed showed Patricia Kellerman exiting a black Bentley, followed by 2 assistants and enough Louis Vuitton luggage to suggest she was home to stay. She wore the kind of understated elegance that whispered old money, clothes that cost more than most people's cars but looked effortlessly simple. She also wore the expression of a woman who knew exactly what she'd find upstairs. My phone rang. Unknown number with a 650 area code. "Mr. Morrison? This is Patricia Kellerman. I believe we have something to discuss." The conference room fell silent as I took the call, putting it on speaker with a gesture to the investors that suggested they might want to pay attention to this conversation. "Mrs. Kellerman. I was wondering when you'd call." "Were you? How interesting. Your brother mentioned you might be expecting my contact." Her voice carried the kind of authority that came from generations of wealth and power. "I assume you're aware of the situation with Miss Blake and my husband?" "I'm aware that your husband has a pattern of targeting engaged women in the tech industry, yes." One of the investors leaned forward, suddenly very interested in this unexpected development. Silicon Valley loved nothing more than gossip about the powerful, and Anthony Kellerman was definitely powerful. "Indeed. And I assume you'd like to do something about it?" "I'd like to make sure it never happens again." "Excellent. Then we're aligned in our objectives." Patricia's laugh was like crystal breaking. "I'm currently entering my building. Miss Blake is about to have a very educational afternoon. Patricia Kellerman was nothing like I'd expected, and everything I'd hoped for. We met at Blue Bottle Coffee in Palo Alto, 30 minutes after her dramatic entrance into Anthony's building had sent Emma fleeing like a user whose password had just been compromised. Patricia looked like European aristocracy. Sharp cheekbones, silver hair cut in a precise bob, eyes that missed nothing and forgave less. "Your brother is very thorough," she said, sliding a tablet across the marble table. David's surveillance photos filled the screen in high-definition detail. "These are excellent quality. I especially appreciate the metadata timestamps." "You hired him?" "I hired him 6 months ago, the moment Anthony started deviating from his usual patterns." She swiped through images of Emma entering and leaving the penthouse, each photo documenting the progression of their affair with forensic precision. "Your ex-fiancé was staying longer than his typical conquests." That suggested either genuine emotion or increased calculation. "Ex-fiancé," I corrected. "Yes, I heard about your response to her betrayal. Quite dramatic, from what I understand." Patricia's smile was razor-sharp, like code that had been optimized for maximum efficiency. "You froze her out of your shared life very systematically." "She made her choice." "Indeed. And now she's about to learn the true cost of that choice." Patricia tapped the tablet, bringing up financial documents. "Anthony doesn't know I'm home. He's been telling Miss Blake that I'm traveling for another month, attending art auctions in Prague and Vienna." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Jake, I need to see you. Everything is falling apart. Please help me. Emma." Patricia noticed my expression and laughed, a sound like champagne glasses being shattered against marble. "She's been trying to reach Anthony all morning. His phone has been going straight to voicemail since I activated the signal blocker in our building. Amazing how dependent people become on their digital connections." "You're enjoying this." "I'm protecting my assets and my family's reputation." "There's a significant difference." Patricia leaned forward, her voice dropping to the tone of someone used to being obeyed without question. "Anthony's affairs usually last 3 months. He discards the women cleanly before I return from my travels, providing appropriate financial settlements and legal documentation to ensure their silence." She pulled up another set of documents, NDAs, financial settlements, legal agreements that painted a picture of systematic predation, protected by armies of lawyers and unlimited resources. This time, Miss Blake got greedy and overstayed her welcome. She's been in residence for 4 months, 2 weeks, and counting. That represents a significant deviation from Anthony's established protocols. My laptop chimed with a notification from David's surveillance system. Emma was back in the building lobby, arguing with security guards who wouldn't let her use the elevator without Anthony's express permission. "She's trying to get upstairs," I said, angling the screen so Patricia could see Emma's increasingly frantic gestures. "I know. I revoked her access this morning when I resumed control of building security." Patricia stood, smoothing her tailored Chanel jacket with movements that suggested decisive action. "She's about to meet the real Mrs. Kellerman. I believe you'll find the interaction educational." Through my laptop screen, I watched Emma pace the marble lobby like a caged animal. She kept checking her phone, calling Anthony's number, growing more agitated with each unanswered ring. Her carefully curated appearance was beginning to crack. Designer clothes wrinkled, hair disheveled, makeup smudged from what appeared to be tears. Then the elevator doors opened, and Patricia Kellerman stepped out like an avenging angel in Armani. The confrontation in Anthony's lobby was everything I'd hoped for, and more. A masterclass in psychological warfare conducted by a woman who'd been trained since childhood to destroy opponents without breaking a sweat. David's cameras captured every moment in excruciating high-definition detail. Emma's face when she realized who Patricia was, confusion, then recognition, then pure terror as her carefully constructed fantasy world collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. Patricia's surgical precision as she dismantled Emma's entire worldview with a few carefully chosen words. "You must be Emma," Patricia said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that came from generations of wealth and power. "I'm Patricia Kellerman, Anthony's wife of 15 years. Emma's mouth opened and closed like a broken program trying to process corrupted data, her entire system freezing as she tried to reconcile this reality with the lies Anthony had fed her. "But," he said, "you were divorced. He said the papers were already filed." "Did he? How fascinating. We celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary last month in Florence. The Uffizi held a private reception in our honor." Patricia showed Emma her wedding ring, a rock that made the engagement ring I'd bought look like costume jewelry from a vending machine. "Our children were so delighted that Papa would finally be home for Christmas this year instead of traveling for business." "Children? Madison is 12, Christopher is 10. They're at La Rosie in Switzerland. You know, the boarding school where the European royal families send their children. But they'll be home for the holidays." Patricia tilted her head with the curiosity of a scientist observing an interesting specimen. "Did Anthony not mention them? How unlike him to omit such important family details." I watched Emma's reality collapse in real time through the surveillance feed. Every lie Anthony had told her, every promise he'd made, every fantasy he'd built, all crashing down like a network under a coordinated cyber attack. "I need to speak to Anthony," Emma said, her voice barely audible above the lobby's ambient noise. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. Anthony is currently meeting with our legal team to discuss some recent irregularities in his expense reports." Patricia's smile was arctic, like code running at absolute zero. "It seems he's been using company funds for personal entertainment. That constitutes embezzlement, Miss Blake, which is a felony in California." Security guards flanked Emma now, not the friendly rent-a-cops you'd find at most buildings, but serious professionals in expensive suits who looked like they'd stepped out of a Secret Service detail. They were politely but firmly escorting her toward the exit, treating her like malware being quarantined from a secure system. "My things are upstairs," Emma protested, looking back at the elevators as if Anthony might appear and explain everything away with one of his practiced smiles. "Your belongings will be delivered to whatever address you provide within 24 hours. Assuming, of course, that you have a permanent address to provide." Patricia turned to leave, then paused with the timing of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. "Oh, and Miss Blake, I'd recommend finding employment soon. The technology industry is remarkably small, and information travels quickly about individuals who make poor choices regarding their professional and personal relationships." The threat was delivered with the casual indifference of someone swatting a fly, devastating effectiveness wrapped in perfect etiquette. Emma stumbled out of the building like a system administrator who'd just accidentally wiped the production servers. Her phone was still pressed to her ear, still calling Anthony's number, still getting the cheerful voicemail message that promised he'd return her call as soon as possible. My own phone rang. Emma, of course. "Jake, please, I need help. Something's wrong. Anthony's not answering, and his wife is here, and she's saying things that don't make sense. Everything she said makes perfect sense. You just don't want to process the data. Jake, please. I don't have anywhere to go. My parents? They think I'm engaged to you. They think we're planning a wedding. I can't tell them what really happened. That sounds like a problem with your personal data management, not mine. Please, I'll make it up to you. I'll do whatever it takes. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." Emma, you didn't make a mistake. You made a calculated decision based on what you thought would maximize your personal benefit. The fact that your calculation was wrong doesn't make it a mistake. It makes it a failure of analysis. I could hear her crying now, the sound of someone whose operating system had finally crashed completely. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem to solve anymore. Emma was waiting for me in the parking garage beneath my office building at 8 p.m., a broken figure in designer clothes that no longer seemed to fit right. Her makeup had run in abstract patterns down her cheeks, her hair was disheveled, and she clutched her phone like a life preserver on a sinking ship. "Jake, thank God you're here." She rushed toward me, but I held up a hand to stop her approach. "Don't. I made a mistake. I know that now. Anthony isn't who I thought he was. He's married, Jake. He has children. Everything he told me was a lie. No, he's exactly who he's always been. You just chose not to see it because the lies were more attractive than the truth." I leaned against my Tesla, studying her like a quality assurance engineer examining buggy code. "Tell me, Emma, when did you first realize you'd been played?" "When his wife showed up. Patricia. She knew about me. She knew about all of us." Emma's voice cracked like a system under load. "There were others, Jake. Before me. She had photos, evidence, documents. She said Anthony does this every time she travels. Finds some stupid woman to entertain him, then discards her when she comes home. And you never suspected? Never ran a basic background check on the man you were ready to abandon your engagement for? How could I? He was so convincing, so passionate. He talked about our future, about the companies we'd build together, the life we'd have." She looked up at me with desperate eyes that reminded me of error messages pleading for user intervention. "Jake, I need to come home. I need to fix this." "There is no fixing this, Emma. This isn't a bug. It's a feature. Your behavior was working exactly as designed. Please, I'll make it up to you. I'll sign a prenup. I'll give up my career. I'll do whatever it takes." I pulled out my phone, showed her the screen. A video call was active, broadcasting our conversation live to my professional network. Engineers, investors, colleagues, startup founders, everyone was watching Emma Blake beg for forgiveness from the man she'd betrayed for a chance at a better deal. "You always said timing was everything in tech," I said, adjusting my suit jacket with deliberate casualness. "Turns out you were right." Emma's eyes widened as she noticed the phone, the little red recording indicator, the growing number of viewers displayed on the screen. "You're recording this?" "I'm documenting this, for posterity, and for professional reference." I ended the call, pocketed the phone. "Your reputation in Silicon Valley is now officially terminated. No one will hire a woman who publicly humiliates her partners for personal gain, then begs for forgiveness when the upgrade fails." You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Emma. I'm simply making sure everyone sees who you really are underneath the professional polish. I got into my car, rolled down the window. Anthony used you and discarded you like disposable hardware. I studied you and avoided you like well-documented malware. Which one of us do you think demonstrated superior technical judgment? She lunged at my car as I started the engine, screaming threats and promises, her voice echoing through the garage like a system error alert that wouldn't stop firing. You'll regret this. When you're alone and miserable, you'll remember what you lost. I backed out slowly, forcing her to step away from the vehicle. The only thing I lost was technical debt, Emma, and technical debt always compounds until it crashes the entire system. In my rearview mirror, I watched her collapse against a concrete pillar, finally understanding that she'd lost everything and everyone who'd ever mattered. Her phone buzzed with notifications, probably bill collectors, repo companies, and former friends who'd seen the video and were distancing themselves from the fallout. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Kellerman. Well played, Mr. Morrison. Anthony has agreed to enter therapy and cease his extramarital activities. He's also resigned from the venture capital firm. Would you be interested in discussing his former position? The compensation package is quite attractive. I smiled, pulling into traffic as Emma's screams faded behind me. Another notification appeared, a connection request on LinkedIn from Patricia Kellerman herself, along with a message, I believe we could accomplish great things together. I have several projects that would benefit from your particular skill set. Perfect code, clean execution, 0 bugs. The system was finally running exactly as designed.